Hey everybody, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Today on the podcast, I'm talking to Tom and Steve, owners and founders of Blue Light Card. Blue Light Card provides those in the NHS, emergency services, social care sector, armed forces, ambulance service, blood bikes, border force, community responders. I could go on and on and on. It's an incredible company that provides discounts online and in store for emergency services frontline responders. Tom and Steve's story is one of incredible authenticity, perseverance, excitement, ingenuity, entrepreneurship. It's a really, really great listen. I really enjoyed my chat with these guys, and I know you're going to enjoy some of the stuff we share, and you see and hear how this journey is developed, how the company came about, what the idea was, the challenges they faced. Steve was in the police and then he left the position. Tom with his sales experience and really getting out there face to face with the customers, with the members, with the businesses. They are such a unique team, and it really came through just how well these guys get on, and again, that authenticity, they really complement each other so well, and I hope that comes across today because it was such a great chat. A big thanks once again to our long-term sponsor, William Wood Watches, who bring us, of course, our Chivalrous Collection, Bronze Edition, Valiant Collection, and coming to 2021 from the 1st of March is their new Triumph Collection. William Wood Watches has the vision to be the leading sustainable watch brand that upcycles rescue service materials for a new life, once forgotten, now reborn. So get over, have a look, get yourself registered, and check out some of the incredible stuff at williamwoodwatches.com. One of our most recent sponsors coming on board is Venari Group Uk. These are the emergency vehicle builders to rival all others. We had Oliver North on the podcast recently, who has been operating in this sector for over 15 years. They are the #1 manufacturer for our NHS ambulance trusts and UK fire and rescue services. The pride that they bring back to British manufacturing is absolutely incredible. Not only have they got the skill set, they have the capacity to turn out over 700 ambulances every single year, and they are leveraging this to the max with some incredible innovations coming out in 2021. They have huge ambitions to become the largest ambulance manufacturer, not only in the UK, but in Europe as a whole. 2021 is a huge year for Venari, and it's a wonderful pleasure to have them on board. I love that hungry mindset that Ollie and the team have, and Venari, of course, comes from the Latin to hunt, and it's incredible to have this team on board with us, hunting down every bit of personal development, every bit of progress, every new win, every big, hairy, audacious goal as we move into 2021. So let's get in there and listen in with Tom and Steve. Like I say, this one was really, really fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. If you're not aware of who Blue Light Card are and you've lived under a rock, we are going to share everything in the notes, don't worry. It's one of those strange things that they're big with a small person feel. And what I mean by that is they're personal, they care, they're authentic, their commitment to both their members and emergency services personnel, but also to the businesses they provide and the team that they now have. The way they look after them, the way they look to celebrate them, even though, as you'll hear, they're not necessarily great at celebrating themselves, they really do look after the team, and they look after the members and the businesses that commit to them and place their faith in Blue Light Card as an organisation. On that note, I thank you for coming back to the Firefighters Podcast. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for taking time out of your busy life to be here. I know you're going to enjoy it. Check the notes out, have a look, share this with somebody. If you haven't heard of Blue Light Card, where have you been? If you have heard of Blue Light Card, then listen in, because you've probably never heard of Tom and Steve before, and this is where it all started. So buckle up for safety, and I will see you on the other side.
Hey Pete, how you doing?
Tom, how's it going, brother?
All good, thanks. You?
I am magical. Tom and Steve, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How are we doing, fellas?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on. So for people unfamiliar with yourselves, I'll just give it a quick intro. You guys are founders, owners of Blue Light Card. You provide NHS, emergency services, social care sector, armed forces, and I know there's loads more with discounts online and in-store. And unless you're a complete alien, when you do live in the UK, you will have already heard of you guys and your tremendous rise. I think I first came familiar with you in maybe 2010, but the company actually started, Steve, in 2008, is that right?
Yeah, it started in 2008. It all started with the sort of idea sort of arose from myself at the time as a police officer. So we used to just sort of flash our warrant card to get discounts.
As we all do. Any opportunity.
As we all do. Yeah, exactly. And the communities wanted to give back, and it was a way that we sort of tricked that discount mechanism. Unfortunately, that wasn't looked on in great light by the police. It was always seen as sort of bribery and corruption. So
how did that work? Was it based on a value scheme? Because in the fire service, we are, and I don't know if they call them gratuitous gifts or whatever, but you're not allowed to accept something over the value of like £20 or it's something arbitrary. Not like we wanted to get given free stuff, but I imagine when you were operational, Steve, in the police, you do get given stuff as well. Obviously you get discounts, but sometimes people come out and they're like, oh, hey guys, you do a great job, have a pizza or something like that, and you're not allowed to. And some services, it is a really fine line, isn't it?
It is exactly, and the police is almost like a zero tolerance. You're not allowed to accept any form of gifting, and it almost became a professional standards matter if you did, which is and it was that way of trying to find, and the sort of idea came around on that exact basis. It was like, is there a way that we can still provide a form of discount to the members of the services, but not labelling you a police officer, not labelling you a firefighter, not labelling you a doctor? And that's essentially where the idea came from. Can we create that community? And that's where the blue light card sort of.
So was the armed services, because I'm not overly familiar, obviously you guys include it as part of yours, but they've always had something like this as well. Was that already around when you were doing it, or did it just come off the back of people want to contribute to the emergency services and trying to find a way to do it? Because it must have been, like you said, it must have been really frowned upon because you were operational at the time, Steve.
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was that thing of you never did it or you did it. So some police officers were quite accustomed to doing it. They didn't really mind. They'd take the risk. They'd show the cards, or they're walking in uniform. They would, get the discounts. Whereas others would be a little bit more hesitant to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing was it wasn't about necessarily the discounts. It was a way I think the communities at the time saw it as a mechanism of giving back and saying thank you and showing their appreciation. So
this is what I'm saying.
It wasn't.
That's what I see. Because I feel like this is a real cultural thing as well. Because Tom, if you look at places like America, I often use America as an example. They are so happy to celebrate their armed services, their fire departments. Oh yeah, you can wear Engine 36. You can wear your what police department you're in. But in the UK, it feels like we've not necessarily not been proud of ourselves, but it is frowned upon, Tom. Why is the cultural difference there?
I think you see it in waves. So when we obviously opened up for everyone. One thing we were also keen to do is support those that aren't necessarily on the front line as well. So we see it all as one community. Because obviously on the front line you get given things, whereas in the supporting roles,
that's what I mean. Control staff and the risks. All
exactly.
Those people. It's a big machine.
And we've seen it in waves over the years. So we've seen when there was Afghanistan and Iraq, there was a real supporting for the armed forces. Around Grenfell, you saw, and particularly some of the London tragedies, you've seen support for the police and fire. And it seems to be in waves, but it doesn't necessarily always stick around. And during the pandemic,
I was about to say, Jesus, the pandemic was really... Because I think the fire department and the police, we've always... police is like a love-hate relationship. The fire department, I'll be just brutally selfish and say, we've got a really USP where we kind of... People like us. It's like the police, you know why you call them, but some people hate them, some people love them, Steve. But fire department, we kind of get in everywhere. But the NHS, I feel like they just got forgotten until this pandemic. The abuse you see, some paramedics get treated as badly as police officers. And it just astounds me when I hear about paramedics getting assaulted, getting kicked. It's horrific.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen, but again, even there's a distinction between NHS and paramedics. There's been a real support for NHS, and I think that's one thing we always wanted to recognise as Blue Light. We've very much gone community-centric, and that we've got a member-first approach, and that's sort of part of our ethos that we've always brought through the company. And as we brought more people into the business, we've all sort of had that approach. So whenever we're doing anything, it's about putting that member first and looking after them. And that's sort of why it works. It's a whole community all as one.
I suppose you have to be able to hold each other accountable and play like devil's advocate and say, well, hang on a minute, how about so-and-so? And how about... Because I was just reading off your list the other day, and I know I only mentioned a few there, but we've got ambulance service, blood bikes, border force, British Armed Services, cave rescue, community first responders, veterans, Coast Guard, MOD police, mountain rescue. I could literally bore people for about 3 minutes with the list. And you really is... Was that a conscious decision? Because obviously when you named it, Was it always called Blue Light, or did you first? Because that's always the thing. Anytime someone starts a business, I imagine you guys sat there for weeks and you were like, "What should we call it? What should we call?" And then you just get caught up on a name. When really, I mean, it's a wonderful name, and like you say, you've captured that inclusivity in what you do. But was it conscious from the get-go?
At first, I think Steve will agree with me. We were first looking at the police option, weren't we? And then it sort of, we looked at further emergency services and NHS. And to be honest, at first, the idea, the principle of it was for those 4 key services. But then when we were in the business development before we launched it, we sort of said, well, we need to look after some of the forgotten services, some of the smaller ones that don't, 4x4 response, for example, cave rescue, people like that do contribute to these. And even now, we have eligibility meetings once a month. We actually have a group of staff that sit down each month and look at that, because
you've got so many community resilience teams. You've got so many things cropping up. I don't say cropping up not in like a horrible way, but so all over the place. And they do add value when those, and you only see them at the worst times. And it's all that thing, you don't appreciate it until you need it. And when you see these big incidents occurring and you go, who the hell is that? Who's that in the yellow, or who's that in the red? And you're like, oh, that's that company. Or that's that service. They've been around for 80 years. And you're like, all right, I've lived in a bit of a bubble then. Never even knew they were about.
Yeah, exactly. And as Tom said, that blue light is almost, I think it's the UK's way of knowing, that's the emergency services. That's the services that help. And
yeah,
we didn't necessarily feel that, the blue light element to it would mean they have to have a blue light card on their vehicles. They have to be in a blue light. So it's the element of they're there to help us. So we almost saw that as that inclusive blue light card community feed.
Was there ever a risk though? Because I had this sort of exact same thing with the Firefighters Podcast, where so what you've done is you've tried to make sure nice inclusive, you including everybody, but there's always that thing that if you try and please everybody, do you please nobody? And how do you develop a niche in that? Do you know what I mean? So we ended up calling it the Firefighters Podcast, but we've had on paramedics, military. I only call it the Firefighters Podcast because I'm a firefighter, but ultimately it represents. And I find that sometimes when people are like, oh, I thought it was just about firefighters. And you're like, no, it's just because and you hate having, if you've got to explain it, and that was probably a bit of reflection on my point, if you've got to explain it, you've gone wrong somewhere, Pete, do you know what I mean? But you guys, straight from the start, was there any concern or any thought that, oh, who is it for? Or was it the overarching first responders or frontline responders, or what was the tagline to start with? Was it blue light to start with, or was there another name?
No, it's always blue light. That's one thing we can say. Yeah, it's always blue light. I think for us, I mean, we've been doing this for 12 years now. It'll be approaching 13 in April from when we first sort of started the company, and I think it's been getting the brand out there. It's taken us a long time to get the brand out there, and a lot of the initials, it was just Steve and I back in the day. It was us slogging away and trying to get the brand out there and people understanding what we're about. And luckily now we've got enough size that when we launched into social care last year, which felt like the right thing to do because it's now the Department of Health and Social Care. So we did that last year, and we were able to do that because we've now got the size that we could launch there and speak to the right sort of government bodies and that sort of thing to do it properly.
When you talk about getting the word out there, though, it's a very different thing to try and do in the sector that you're doing it, because most people say, I'll get the word out there. I'm going to stand in the market square, or I'll go to a university campus. But your audience are blue light workers, blue light responders. So just rocking up outside a police station or an ambulance station is a bit weird for some people. They might think, who's this anorak come to sat outside the front? There must have been some situations were you were traveling distances just to see one crew or one team at a distant ambulance or police station or whatever. What were those first early days like? Because I think I've read stories about you guys just going up and down in a van with leaflets and stuff.
Yeah, exactly that. We've had vans, driven as far as north of Glasgow, I think, in a day, and then straight back down south. We've toured the country in vans, sort of distributing our material, trying to
love it.
Get members on, raise awareness, try and show them about the service, do stand-up days, visit on forces days. We really have sort of slept in the back of the van as well, on many occasions in the sense of needing to try and get the word out there. Obviously, the challenge now. Not the same. Obviously, due to the huge volume of members we have, it makes it sort of communicating and obviously branching out a lot easier. And as Tom alluded to, sort of the government links and things helps as well. But back in the day, but we we found it really difficult, if truth be told, trying to actually, sort of do that exact thing. It was that initial challenge. How do you get companies on? How do you get members on?
I was about to say that.
The members and the members want the companies.
Getting it off the ground, because a lot of people, and I run a couple of different things, but that people have the entrepreneurial itch, but a big aspect, and you guys will know far more than me, so I'm asking out of genuine interest, is the procrastination of like perfection. You see books like Ready, Fire, Aim and stuff like that, and people think I need to get it to X before I start. And I look at your model. When did you think, we need to have X? What was the number? How many companies did you like? We need this many on board. Because when you're standing there talking to, let's say you imagine you're up there outside whatever station in the middle of nowhere and you go, this is what we do. We provide discounts, blah, blah, blah. And the first question will be, what sort of places can I get a discount from? And originally it was nowhere, surely. So at what point did you feel ready or able to launch, or how did you get it off the ground? Because people look at it now and go, oh God, it's easy for Tom and Steve. But back then you must have been driving places and no one showed up. And when do you feel ready to pitch it? When was the time?
Right at the start, it was. I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but it was more about trying to get the right company, rather than quantity. So finding a company that would be beneficial to members, and we thought would have would resonate with members across the country. So it was finding a national company that we could partner with, rather than lots of small independents across the UK. Obviously, they were more than welcome to join. But the big idea to try and obviously create that saturation was going to have to be the bigger company. So that was a challenge. We've been into companies, we've been laughed out of companies in the sense of two young lads on a sense trying to land a national retailer across without any members. So, we've been through it. We've sort of lived that and, sort of come out the other side and just carried on, persevering with the idea of what we're trying to achieve. And, eventually, bigger companies did join, and that's what made our lives a lot easier.
I love what you say about perseverance as well, because that really is the big one, and you've got to be super creative to push hard with that entrepreneurial itch. I mean, Tom, what were some of the strategies, whilst it's never easy to write them down, it's often just persistence and relentlessness of getting past the gatekeepers? Because I'm in that position, maybe I'm asking for myself, you know what I mean, where I speak to people and it's always the gatekeeper. Do you know what I mean? It's the receptionist, it's the assistant, and the man or female is not a sexist thing, but it's how do I get to the decision maker? You spend days talking to someone and they go, I love it, Tom, let me speak and you're like, I thought you were the decision maker. Who the hell are you? Why am I talking to you?
I think initially it was a lot of research to understand who were, what the structures were. I mean, looking on LinkedIn was a great opportunity. I mean, but saying that back then when we first started, LinkedIn wasn't as
big as it is now. No,
wasn't as big as it is now. I think genuinely it was getting on the phone and just being genuine. I think that was a lot of it. But as Steve said, it was a chicken and egg situation. Trying to get the right companies and getting members on board. I mean, we were lucky. We got, blast from the past here, we got Blockbuster Video involved, Blockbuster Entertainment, and they backed it, and we got a great deal with them. I think it was it about 5 free rentals, Steve, with your blue light card or something like that?
Yeah, it was 5 free rentals, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly that. And take that into Blockbuster and walk out with your DVD rentals. So it's really good. Really powerful.
So that was really cool. And then we did some cool stuff with 3 Mobile as well. We got sponsored by them for a while and did some cool stuff with them. And that's actually when we got our van and went around the country. Went from Newcastle down to Cornwall within a week, and sort of went to visit different stations, handing out some cards at the time and that sort of stuff to get the word out there.
But like we've said as well, you had to put that legwork in. It must have been times where, was this the first thing you'd ever done? I mean, you guys can't have gone straight into something like that. Maybe it was the first swing went out the park, but I speak from my own experiences. We've done probably 6 businesses in the last 5 years. Only 3 of them kept going, and one of them cost me the tune of about 15 grand. You've got to. People think, they look at it and go, oh, it was easy straight off the bat. But what was your background, Tom? And was this the first thing you'd ever gone for?
So I went to university, and then whilst there, so Steve and I have been sort of best friends since we were about 8 years old. So
Steve says he can't stand you. Says he hates you. No,
exactly. That's why it works.
So you guys have always known each other, but you went off on the university route.
Yeah, I went on, but whilst there, I got involved in the hatchery project. There, so that was like a business incubator type thing. So we did a few business competitions, and Steve and I actually pulled Steve into that as well, and we got involved in the hatchery project there. So that sort of started the itch. But I mean, we've always, since we were young, I mean, we used to do, paper rounds together and everything. We've always wanted to run a business together. And then, worked on the free market when I was young and everything like that. So we've always wanted to do something and work and earn. Yeah. And then, I mean, even with Blue Light, I don't think Blue Light was necessarily easy to begin with. We realised someone had to go full time. So I left my role. I was at Enterprise Rent-A-Car on a graduate scheme. I was an assistant manager at that time. I left to run this full time, and it was a slog for many years. Yeah. I mean, luckily I lived with my parents at the time, because otherwise I'd have been out on the street. And I think even during that time, I mean, Steve and I, we had a web design business as well to try and I'd literally go knocking on shop doors to speak to them about doing web design for people, just to try and pay some bills.
Have you got a web page? Do you need it improving? Do you need it adapting? What's your SEO? Do you need it optimizing more? So Steve, from your side, that must have, and I've had this with other business partners before, where you want to be there all the time, and you must have been feeling Tom's pain, and you're like, oh mate, I'm just checking in. How's everything going? What do you need me to do? I don't finish work. I'm on a 12-hour shift. Do you know what I mean? You were balancing that, because you'd obviously joined the police service. I'm assuming after you'd failed to get into the fire service, but that's okay as well. And you'd obviously pushed hard. You're in the police service, but that must have been hard for you. Seeing Tom out there doing that and wanting to put all your time in, but striking a balance.
Yeah, I couldn't list the hoses. It just failed.
It's okay. I don't want to talk about it.
I didn't have time for it. It was horrible. And essentially, I was working 2 jobs for a lot of it, in the sense of I was obviously had that, striking that balance, trying to make sure obviously I was rested for the police, and not putting myself out there and putting myself in danger and putting my colleagues in danger, but at the same time using my rest days as a perfect opportunity to sit down with Tom, go through it, work on the business side of it. I mean, we kind of, Tom and I work so well because Tom's really sales and marketing. I'm very tech and sort of operations driven. So very early on, we decided to split ourselves down those sections. So Tom would go out, even on the website side of things, get the business, design things up, make things look great, and then I would write the code, put it all together, host it, manage it, deal with the ongoing operations of it, and it kind of worked. And the
Tom
same thing
just had to keep feeding the funnel, I suppose. Like say, and you could do that in the nights, you can do that in the evenings and on the weekends and stuff like that. Tom's out there, and just keep feeding the machine, basically.
Yeah, exactly, and exactly that. I could pick it up, after a night shift, after a late shift, after an early shift. There was always times I could pick up and finish off that work. It was like I said, Tom said, it was that real challenge when you walk into it. You put all your forecasts together. You look at things and think, we can be, self-sufficient within X many months. And the reality is, it's a lot different. It's a lot harder, and it was a lot more work than we thought at first. And we've learned a hell of a lot along the way. And the biggest one was being able to adapt. So the web design business wasn't something we wanted to do. It's not, it's something we enjoyed, for parts of it, but it's something we had to do in order to keep, the main business going, and that we had. It was about survival, and at that point, that was about the only way we could keep Blue Light Card going.
I was going to say, it's always been about Blue Light. Blue Light is where our passion is, where our heart is, and as Steve alluded to, it was just to be honest, it was doing the minimal possible to pay the bills and keep Blue, therefore keep Blue Light going. And luckily, it wasn't for too long. Yeah, we managed to get Blue Light going, and that's where we sort of built from.
Steve, you said a really great point about striking the balance, because you hear a lot of people speak about get the balance, work-life balance. Now, I'll be honest. I think that's a little bit of BS, because there is a balance. Of course, everyone has a balance, but your balance might be 95-5. It might not be 50-50. Now, I was an addict at a point in time in my life, so I know I have, and I see this in the two of you. Not saying you're addicts, but you have what will be termed as obsessive or OCD or passionate, or the word that we give it depends on the sector in which it lives in. If you're somebody that abuses substances, then you're an addict. But if you're Steve Jobs, well, then you're passionate and you're driven. Do you know what I mean? Do you, either of you, think that balance is a universal term, or what is balance to you? Because I don't think, if you're going to get anything off the ground, you guys, each of you must have, I mean, what you've created, you must have that aspect of obscene. What some people would look at it, if they really looked at what you guys have done and what it's cost you emotionally, time-wise, they'll go, God, that's just obsessive. That's too much, Steve. Tom, that's ridiculous. Give it a break. Do you know what I mean? But it was never going to make it without that.
No, balance varies. And even my own balance referred to by other people. If you ask my wife, for example, she'll probably tell you that my work-life balance isn't as balanced as perhaps I think it may be.
Yeah.
So it's very, it's that challenge. But what I would say is the way I see it, work-life balance, it's at the point where you still feel that you have control of your life and what you're doing. And I think it's at the point when you tip over that edge and it becomes too much where you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how you're plowing forward, you kind of lost that sense of direction. It's that point where I think you start losing that balance.
Yeah.
And it is when you're desperate for something to work, it can be very, very easy to funnel every hour of every day into doing something to try and get it to succeed. And it's at that point realizing sometimes you need to take a step back to actually move forward.
Yeah.
And it's knowing at that point where to break off, and that in itself has been a challenge at times.
Is there a term about sort of defining success as well, Tom? Sorry, I was going to say, because I have it where I get up in the morning, I'm busy as hell, but I know that I want to get these 3 or 4 things done. And once I've got them done, I don't necessarily stop as such, but I allow myself to take the win from the day and go, I've won now, rather than sprinting like the busy fool.
I was going to say that I think we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And I think that sometimes you can spend all day there doing jobs that really, if you just take a break, come back to it next day, you're always going to have spinning plates. You're always going to have something in the background that's always going to be going on.
Yep.
And you sort of take that on the chin. You realise that you can't cross off everything, but you just got to make sure that you're happy with what you've done on that day.
That's what I mean, being able to take that win, because it's an infinite game. It's not a finite game. I want to be the biggest emergency services discount company this week. Well, no, we want to still be going in a month, 3 years, 5 years time. And if you quote unquote burn out and sprint too fast, then you're never going to get it. And it's healthier that you never finish, if you know what I mean. It's the journey, isn't it? And you've got to be in love with the journey. You've got to be in love with the what some people would associate as work. Otherwise, there is no destination, really, is there?
I think we're really lucky in that we're doing something that we love, and that it is a obsession. It's like a child. You know what I mean? It's your everything. But I think we've been very lucky in the last few years that we've built a really good team around us as well. And now that we have grown to where we are and we've got the team around us, it does mean that Steve and I there's less and less on us, and the business itself is run by a great team, which allows us to be more strategic nowadays and to look at that sort of future, building Blue Light into what we want it to be.
Yeah. As you've gone through that growth, getting to the point where you can acknowledge that your skill set lies in a particular area, and between the two of you, there will still be some flat spots where neither of you have a particular skill set, and that's obviously where you start to evolve a team. How easy was it to start letting go of those first few responsibilities? I mean, what was the first, who was not the name, you don't have to name the person, but what was the first team member you brought on board? What was the first thing where you thought, I'm happy to let go of a little bit of that control? Because it's petrifying and it's scary, and you're like, oh God, you're a little bit shit and your standards aren't where I need them to be. And you've always got to take a bit of that risk that it's not going to be perfect. What was the first thing that you were able to go, I don't need to do that, me or Steve, or neither of us needs to do that? What was the first thing?
For us, it was a customer services approach. And the reason for that was that it wasn't that we didn't want to do it, it's that we felt that our members deserved to have that response time and that care.
Yeah.
So whilst we were getting busier and having to have meetings and go to London and et cetera, we wanted to make sure that they were being looked after. So we started that. I mean, and our first member of staff has gone through and done a whole heap of roles for us in different teams over the time. And developed as an individual with us as well. For us, from day one, again, was a big focus on culture as well. And so we always talk about the sort of 3 relationships that our business is built on. It's the members at the forefront, making sure that everything we do, we have them in mind. Our staff, because without them, we can't run our business. And finally, our retail partners, we've got to make sure that we look after them as well, because without them, we haven't got a proposition. So essentially what we've done is we built our business on relationships, and staff were a really important part of that.
No, you're right, because people don't want to be getting rushed replies at 10:30 at night when you're trying to smash through the inbox and get them out there. And without being intentional, it will feel rushed. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to get into the copy and paste habit where people aren't feeling like they're important. I've just given you my money and you're not even responding to me 6 days, seriously, for a message. Do you know what I mean? I imagine that was the balance that started to tip, where one of you went, we've got to get somebody on board customer service.
Yeah, that, and also we had cards as well, so we were distributing the membership cards, we were printing those in house, packaging those manually by hand. So seeing a few hundred of those a week now. Now we're getting to the point where there's tens of thousands going out. It's quite crazy. So the big challenge, like Tom and I, is we used to do everything. So we generally from the point of printing the cards to writing the cards to sending the cards to speaking to people on customer services, letting go was probably not the person coming in problem, was our problem in actually wanting to let go and then being
That's
prepared.
what I mean. Yeah. You're like, oh, but I can do that. I'm not paying somebody to do that. I can do that. It's bloody easy. Yeah, but it's time, isn't it? It's time. It's just the irredeemable asset.
Exactly. And you become more efficient. Your business starts to grow more when you actually start spending your time in the right areas. So obviously letting other people handle the distribution of cards, buying the right machinery at the point when we needed the right machinery to handle that card. So it's all made the sort of
You get so busy working in the business that you don't work on the business. Do you know what I mean? You'd grown it into a healthy beast, but you were bogged down in it. It was rising tide, and you were like, "This is great, this is great, this is great." Oh, hang on a minute, it's around my neck, and now I can't work on the business because I am so busy in the business.
Yeah, and it's getting the right people in as well. We've always made sure that we've got people that are skilled coming into the business, as well as having the right. We call it almost a spark about them, but we look for that on interviews as well. Like, so it's got something. They've got something about them, and that again adds to our culture. But I think particularly in some of the areas where Steve and I aren't particularly skilled, bringing the right people in has really helped to grow things.
Which one of you, as well, I was going to ask, sorry, do you think is the more difficult to work with? Because and you've had that feedback from team members, because I've had it before. When you say about that interesting spark, that's a lovely way to put it, but I just term it as freaks. And what I mean by that is I'm like, have you ever been called a bit of a freak? And people are like, oh, that's very offensive, Pete. And I'm like, I'll be honest with you, I'm a hell of a freak. I'm Marmite. Do you know what I mean? I will fly that fleet frag really high, and I've had feedback in businesses and stuff that, it's great, Pete, but it's like trying to drink from a fire hose working with you. It's like trying to hug a train. It's fun, but it's like someone said to me once, it's like seeing a 10,000 volt cable sparking around on the floor. It looks fun and exciting, and you can touch it and it sparks you. You talk about that spark but if you grab hold of it for too long, it will kill you. And that is, for you guys, you've had to be really intense to get it off the ground. And then handing that responsibility over, or getting team members on board. Who's had the feedback that says, "Oh, you know what? When Tom, or when Steve says something to me, and it's really, I know he's trying to say it nicely, but he's really blunt." And who was the first one to get that feedback, and how has it been telling each other?
No comment.
No comment. I would. The only way I caveat that is Tom's a nice guy, very nice guy. So not a lot more people.
Tom's a nice guy, and Tom's got that salesmanship as well. Do you know what I mean? He's the salesman, so he's straight on board. And I love to sell, but I'm also like, you haven't done the thing I asked you to do. Did you not understand it? What was the problem? And then I'm like, I let myself down because I'm like, what is wrong? Are you a bit lazy? And it's like, you don't want to say that, but sometimes you're like, whereas Tom's a nice guy, is he? So.
To me, a lot of the times we make mistakes. I normally, and Tom's the same, I think, as well with this, is we normally blame ourselves in the sense of, it's something that we probably should have foreseen in the sense of, around training. Have we put in the appropriate measures in place? Have we done the things? So we've been really fortunate. We've got a really good staff base. We've got really low turnover because we like to retain. We set out the right goals, and we try and put in the right processes and the right things in place to allow staff to enjoy working here. So needing to be sort of firm and over the top, we don't need to be, because we like to put the right training in place. But where we do slip up, where we do make mistakes, because inevitably we all make mistakes.
Everybody does.
It's part of the process. It's just acknowledging those mistakes and trying to find out how we can rectify that going forward as a team, rather than just you've screwed up here.
Exactly.
It needs to be fixed.
Otherwise, you place yourself in that victim mindset, don't you? You don't take control of it and go, right, I didn't communicate that well enough. I didn't communicate it well enough. I didn't explain it. For whatever reason, you didn't ask enough questions. I didn't explain it well enough. I walked away with the interpretation that this was the expected outcome, and that was my fault because I didn't give you the resources, the time. I didn't make it clear enough. I didn't demonstrate it as a priority because I was a bit too passive or whatever. It was striking that balance then.
Yeah, and in the early days, as I said, Tom and I, we built the whole thing. We wrote the whole thing. We built the website. We built the journeys. We've absolutely everything we built. So all the information for everything, all the manuals were in our head. So if someone made a mistake or if people didn't understand how it worked, it's because we didn't tell them. So they didn't have access to the manual that would actually tell them how to do the job. So it became a case of, if we don't tell people, the things that we know, then how can we expect them to do it right? So,
and you were creating something so unique as well. You're creating something really new, to be fair. I mean, yes, there's discount cards that belong to large corporations in the past, but yours was, the way that it operates is very, very unique. So there was no manual for it, really.
Right. I think the other thing is along the way is that we can't both say either that we weren't making mistakes along the way as well.
Yeah.
So when that's the thing, and I don't see. I think a first mistake is actually, it's a learning process. You don't count it as something going wrong. You count it as a learning process. It's if you do it again, that's where a mistake's made. It's all about learning from that. What's great is that Steve and I have found. I think being small to begin with is that we could very much work together, and we worked as a combination. So where I was weak, Steve was strong, and vice versa. So actually, as a team, we work really well.
Yeah, and I suppose you had to overcome your expectations of each other, or not overcome, but you manage those expectations early. For example, you're out kicking ass and taking names, Tom, and saying, Steve, this is what we're hoping it to look like. Steve's like, yeah, absolutely, I've got a great idea. I'm going to code that. It's great. And then he comes out with not an end product, but he comes out with something he's been working on for 3 weeks, and you go, that's not what I had in mind. I didn't think you were going to do that.
The thing is, we were always both across each other's work as well. So we always knew what was going on. We're very unique as a combination. I think that's what works well. We're very we'll talk openly, but work is work. Outside of, but wives don't get it as well. Outside of work, we still hang out, and we still spend a lot of time together. That's not work. Yeah. So therefore, that's our sort of best friend sort of time. Do you know what I mean? So
how was it? How did you keep doing that though? Because that must have been difficult to say, oh right, yeah, shall we unplug and let's go and whatever, play pool or go out for this or go out for that, and then having that overwhelming urge to go, oh well, we really need to get this thing finished, Steve.
Yeah, it's difficult. Again, I mean, it started, on a 6 o'clock morning, Tom would come pick me up to the gym. We'd get to the gym, then we'd start work, on rest days, and then we'd go back and we'd do something in the evening, we'll go out for a drink in the evening. So it literally was an entire day thing. Again, I think sometimes just our bodies wanted to switch off a little bit as well and have that time, that normal time where we could just chat and just have a conversation. Because, we have been doing it since a young age, and we didn't, so there were friends were going out, spending nights out. We were just very much at home in front of the computer. And as Tom said, we kind of were each other's support in a sense as well for a lot of that journey. So at times when I was working late, Tom would just come in and be there and just would have conversations while we're working, and vice versa. We spent many nights where we've done an all-nighter when we've been trying to put products live and things like that. I think the biggest thing for us is Tom and I have always been honest, and we've been asked to have conversations, and we have easy conversations. Some people might even call it arguments, but as soon as it's finished, we actually get, 9 times out of 10, we always seem to get the best result out the end, and that's the right result for Blue Light Card.
Do you think the art of being able to have a debate, Steve, is something we're losing? Because I feel like it is. I speak really passionately sometimes to people, and they're like, oh, I don't want to have an argument. I'm like, we're not having an argument. We're having a debate, yeah? Let's have a debate. It's my way of flexing your point. You've made a point, Steve. Now I'm going to flex it. See how do you believe in the point you've made? Do you know what I mean? I'm not being argumentative. I'm not trying to be pedantic. I want to flex that point, and then if you can prove it, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well how about I throw these few curveballs, and then we go, yeah, that was fine. Some people might come out the other night and go, God, that was stressful. Why'd you have to make it so difficult? Because I want to know that you believe in it, but some people get so emotional these days. I think the art of communication is struggling.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think it's different in different teams. I mean, we even see it now. I mean, I'm a big believer in being challenged in the sense of, I overlook a lot of the tech side of business, and that very much is, there's not necessarily a right way and a wrong way. There's different approaches that get different results. So it's the case that I want to see my developers coming out with different ideas, challenging perhaps ways that we're going to do that might be a better way. And we're all for that, because again, it's about building the product that's better. I mean, we spend a lot of time with allowing some developers some R&D time to go away and, we worked on a new system and we gave them, weeks of R&D time to go away and find what they thought was the best solution and pitch it to us.
Yeah.
Because when you don't know everything, and it's a case of, like as Tom said before, getting the team, having a field of people around you that can also feed into that journey as well now, and come up with their own ideas to get us where we want to go.
Yeah, and for them not to feel too much like, I mean, obviously it is your thing, but not too much like it's your thing, because if they go, oh, what is it exactly that you were looking for when you were saying that, Steve? You're like, well, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? You take and have a go and have a play out there. You're not going to break anything. We're in R&D time, and even if you spend 2 weeks, you come up with something amazing, but it doesn't quite fit into the box. That's okay, but you can't, the thinking that's gotten you to one place can't necessarily take you further. So you almost need somebody who's not in Steve's head to give their version and something they've seen, or they've seen another company doing, or they can write the code in a different way, a different fashion, a different technique, and it comes out a different outlook. And you were never going to get there by yourself, hence the strength of the team.
Yeah, completely. And let's say, I'm very, very fortunate of late, the last couple of years, we've got a very, very good tech team. Something obviously I oversee, and, some people come from some very big companies, some large organisations, and they've really added a lot to the team. And as I say, Tom's seen that across the rest of the business as well, with other teams that have got that expertise. And what the great thing is about them is they're all experts in their own areas as well. So they've got their own ideas, they've got new ways of doing it, and it's really helped us and it still is, helping us move the product forward.
Have you ever had those moments, Steve, where, because obviously I want to ask you a different question in a minute, but I'll ask you this one. Someone that's spent their entire life developing themselves, and they're a high graduate in tech and code writing and all this sort of stuff, and they might come in and go, oh, well, I've worked at so-and-so, Steve. This is, I'm happy to apply for your company, but have you ever felt like because you should employ people who have got more skill sets or better skill sets than you, but have you ever had those conversations in an interview, or when somebody comes into the session and you're like, Jesus, this person's really good and I feel like out on my depth? Has there ever been any of that?
The good thing is I understand a lot about the mechanics and how everything works, so I can follow the conversations pretty well, but I'd like to think the majority of my developers are better than me in the sense of how they develop.
And they should be.
And that's because I want them to build the products. They are good, they are great, and I respect them for that. So I listen to them, and their points of view all get considered.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. We're bringing people in, not because I want to be, sort of top of the pile and want to be able to, dictate how my orders go. I want their experience. I want their skills to actually feed into the team. So yeah, I'm very much a believer everybody within that team is, individually better than I am.
Yeah.
We also bring in is that it's not. So Steve and I founded it, and we did it together in the early days. But actually, it's our blue light card. We're Team DLC. We're all built into it together, and actually, everyone's got an ability to shape the future of the company and have their ideas. So we're doing it as a team. It's not nowadays. It's not Steve and I. It's the team, and that they're the ones that are growing the company and putting their ideas in. And we brought them into the company, as Steve said, because they're better than we are. That's the whole idea. That's the whole point.
That's the whole point.
About buying them into the journey, into the story, and saying, look, you can really shape this, and we go in somewhere exciting. And ultimately, which is amazing, look at the community we're benefiting. That's
the bit, isn't it? That's the massive USP that really gives you guys that. Yeah,
it's amazing. And some of the stories, I mean, especially in the pandemic, some of the stories we've heard and some of the people we've helped, it's just incredible each day to be able to do that.
Yeah. Now, what makes it really unique, I think, about your company as well, and we talk about authenticity, because Steve, obviously, you, as referenced already, you came from an operational background. You were police, operational police officer on the front line. That must have been the moment when you decided to leave your full-time role. Must have been a colossal decision. Obviously, Tom was already kicking ass, taking names. He was out there doing what he was doing, but for you to step away from that must have been huge.
Yeah, and obviously Tom did the first big step, which I'm forever grateful for, because we wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for that. I had a few different things. I had a mortgage at the time. I've still got got a mortgage, had family, young child to look after. So it was a little bit of a different decision, and obviously Tom took that on. And exactly that. When I made the decision, it was a massive decision, because it was a stable job. I was 8 years into the police.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And there's something quite nice being able to say, I've got this massive thing that I do on the side. in addition to this, I'm that much of a, absolute animal. I can do this and this, and also then you were still authentic because you still came, the blue light card still came from operational personnel and, great sales team and all that sort of stuff. But you didn't lose any authenticity, but you know what I mean? It was no longer there. You weren't going to be able to say, I'm actually still an operational police officer.
No, exactly. No, definitely not. But the sense was, I think what it did allow though is it allowed me to, that balance we've been speaking about. It allowed me to spend more time developing the product the way that we wanted it to go and allow us to branch out. Yeah. So obviously we needed to make technical integrations. We needed to do things that will allow the site to work in a particular way. Do various different things that needed my skill set.
Yeah.
So without that, we think we had to sort of balance that need. The operational side never goes away, and that's exactly as Tom said. That's what everything's about for us. It's about striving to be the best and provide the best benefits to the community. Now, that's not necessarily just providing a discount, as we said before. We've one of our biggest, proudest moments for me personally was we've always been to Alton Towers theme park when we were kids. We've loved it. But the biggest time for us was when we hired the theme park out, so we got the keys to the park.
Yeah, I know. I remember it. I remember it coming out and saying, this is a emergency services day out on Towers. I was like, hey, it's incredible.
Exactly. And we walking around the empty park in the morning, deciding where our banners were going to go, what was going to happen, and then watching the influx of families happy coming in to celebrate the day. And, hardly any queues, just service personnel all mingling amongst each other, having conversations, chats, and it's something that we've continued. Obviously, it's made it a bit difficult with the pandemic, obviously, but it's something we're continuing year in, year out, and we've increased it from, one service day at Alton Towers now to 5 or 6 throughout the year at, Thorpe Park, Legoland, and Chessington, at Alton. It's just, it's an amazing thing to see. So it's not for us. It's not even about. It's generally about that. It's about the members. It's about that community thing, and going that one step further. We don't need to do that, but we want to do that.
Oh, yeah. And it's like you say, it's the chicken and egg thing as well, when you say we don't need to do that to grow the business. But ironically, in doing things like that, people go, oh man, that's bloody cool. I love that they don't, they didn't have to do that and they've done it. Yeah, you know what? And without knowing it, they have those conversations and people go, oh, emergency services day, Alton Towers, this part. And they go, who's doing that? And they go, blue light card. Don't you know who they are? Well, you've been living under a rock or what? Is that unique aspect there?
It was. I mean, I do remember that first one. It was incredible to do, but it was something that we always had on the tick sheet, wasn't it, Steve? That we really wanted to do. And
how did that conversation happen, Tom? When one of you first must have gone, you know what? You could just go, hey, we get discounts at Alton Towers. Let's go and. When did you? Who? Not taking credit for it, but whose idea was it, and who went? Let me go and ask them if we can have the whole bloody park. And you're like, what? What, the whole park? That's going to cost us loads.
I can't remember, to be honest. It's probably one of these conversations that was like, oh, mate, wouldn't it be cool to hire that out? Oh, that'd be really cool. Should we ask them? Yeah, let's ask them about it.
Did they? Were they straight on board, or were they like, do you need the whole park, Tom? That sounds a bit obscene. How did it go, or were they just straight in? I don't know.
Merlin are one of our really, really good partners, and something that's just cemented itself over the years. And I think they had a lot of faith in us, and a lot of the biggest challenges were the operational requirements of having a park and the ride availability in regards to making sure that the park was filled enough for it to be open, if that makes sense.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. You need to guarantee that people are coming in.
Exactly. So that was our biggest challenge, because we didn't know, we didn't have anything to work off to give us that idea. But yeah, it was something they were really, really supportive of. And we, as I say, we've gone across the entire Merlin brand now, really, in the UK with the sort of services they are offering. I think there was talk of one with Bear Grylls shortly and various other different attractions. So we've been able to do some really, really good stuff.
What was the first meeting that you sort of came out of where somebody said something, not one of you, but like somebody across the table said something obscene in a great way, and you both tried to be like stone-faced and be like, oh yeah, absolutely, I think that's great, and you went out and went, Jesus Christ, you just said that, didn't he? You heard him say that number, yeah? Or you heard him say this. There must have been, I mean, even the CEO, whatever, of Alton Towers must have been cool. But I look at some of the people that you have. I mean, last year, some of the biggest ones were looking like, New Look, KFC, companies like that. There must have been one, none of these brands are better or worse than the others, but one of the early ones that came on board and were like, yeah, that's great. And you're like, oh my God, that's a massive one. Who was that first one, do you think?
Well, I'd say potentially Blockbuster at the time, because I mean we were so small at the time. I mean we were looking at tens of thousands of members, not even 100,000 members by that point. So,
but tens of thousands is a lot anyway. Surely when you got to 1,000, you must have gone, Jesus Christ, this is a real thing.
Yeah,
this is a thing.
That's not play it down.
No, I know, but when does the number stop impressing you? Do you know, not that it's not, I know it still impresses you now, but you must have been like, 1,000. You must have those high five moments when you were like, dude, when it gets to 1,000, let's go out for a steak or whatever.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a blur, to be honest with you. I can't, you try and think back to, to being at those numbers and running through it. And yeah, most definitely 1,000 was pretty impressive. I think 10,000, 100,000 I think was a big one when we celebrated. Yeah, I don't know, Tom, it almost kind of blended into one, didn't it? In the sense of we really, because we were working so hard, I don't really think we had much time to reflect, certainly in the early days, on our number growth. And we were just really trying to build.
Yeah. I think we've been terrible over the years. To be honest, it's something that Steve and I have said over the years. We've been terrible. We're terrible as an organisation of actually recognising when something's gone right or when a milestone happens. We're always on to the next thing. So, and to be honest, we even do it now. We just, something, we plan for something, we do something, and then we're on to the next thing.
Well, it's the tortured genius, isn't it? It's that tortured genius analogy where you're so head down, push, and you almost I imagine you guys do that, listen to the work you do with the team, and speaking to one of your personal assistants or whatever, she was very, very much, the guys are great, they're really acknowledging stuff like that, but I imagine between the two of you, it's very much head down and you don't necessarily celebrate those wins, because you do see it in big companies where they try and put things in like a bell or, a cannon if they have like someone at their offices where they're like, no, we need to recognize the wins, we need to celebrate the wins. For you two as much as anybody else.
Yeah, and I think we've started doing a little bit more. So we've started doing sort of company meetings once a month where we get everyone on Zoom or Teams and just have a chat about some of the great things that have happened in each department. And we have very much started to try and recognise each week sort of some of the great work that's being done within the company. But we are terrible in that we just move on to the next thing. But that's not because we don't acknowledge it's a great thing. It's that we're pushing for that next thing and for growing it. And it's a bit, as you say, it's a bit of an addiction. The company is a bit of an addiction.
It's a healthy addiction, though. We use words like addiction, but again, it's addiction, it's passion. And you see it, I'm sure you guys have read stories. I love the old biographies and stuff like that. You read stuff about people like Tiger Woods and not wanting to celebrate, the first PGA championship or something like that because it's like, well, so-and-so's got 7 or the target is this, or like you guys saying, we don't want to be the biggest company in January. We want to be a successful part of the emergency services community for decades. It's not a race to the end of the week. It's not a race to the end of the year. It's about keep going. What's next? And also, I suppose, being less impressed by the numbers and staying involved. I talk to a lot of people about being less impressed and more involved, because you can step back and rest on your laurels and go, oh wow, Steve, 100,000, wow, let's high five and knock it on the head, shall we? Whereas keep leaning in, it's a healthy addiction, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's also remaining humble. I think that's also something that we have internally as well. It's about realising still what we're there for, why we're doing what we're doing, who we're supporting. Can we do more to do that? I think we're always trying. But I mean, there are some cool things along the way. Like Steve said, with Alton Towers, that first time, I do remember being there and little bits like that. When getting Morrison's on recently was great. Them coming involved as well. That was a great thing. And we have added some big names recently. But again, it's the team. It's the team effort. It's the guys that work with the teams. It's the guys that work with the retail partners that are pushing it and getting more involved and building BLC for us.
You spoke earlier about some of the the Grenfells, the 911s, and when we were talking about the numbers, they clock up obviously in numerical fashion one by one, but like you say, past a certain point, it becomes like a compound effect, like an investment, doesn't it? And they go in surges more than just 1s and 2s and stuff like that. What moments have you seen over the past 12, 13 years that you guys have been doing it? Like you say, there was this certain 911s or the Grenfells or the London issues and stuff like that when they'd happened in surges. Has that surge plateaued? Do you feel as you break into different countries or different sectors? What's the next bit that's going to be the next jump, I suppose, for blue light cards, Steve?
Yeah, we've seen like I said, Tom said, the big surges. What I say is at the minute we've got a very consistent surge in the sense of blue light card names. It seems to be cemented now, and we like to think it's because of what we've been doing and the discounts that are coming, and that's obviously having that word of mouth effect.
Yeah.
and that's creating that surge in itself. The minute the names just keep passed on, and that's seeing in itself the big growth we're seeing. And now the additional surges are on top of that when the different events happen. For us, the next stage is more focused around, I'd say, post-pandemic, about how we can help as an organisation with our membership base to help give back in the sense of get people back onto the high street where appropriate, help spending. These companies that have struggled. How can we use our reach to actually help?
That's what I mean. You've kind of got a different economic responsibility now because you have reached so many areas of the sector. Do you now feel that responsibility? Do you?
I think so, in a way that we can help, because obviously, our member, we've got such a great product. I'm really, really proud of it, and obviously that's shown by the fact that the sign-ups we're getting, the member feedback, and it'd be right that these members deserve the discounts they deserve, and the companies are more than happy to provide them. So it would seem almost our obligation as a service now, and doing our bit to try and help stimulate that high street as best way we can. Because when we go back, post-pandemic, it's going to be a challenge for these businesses that are opening up again to try and create that footfall, create that energy on the high street.
Yeah, but like you say, it's two ways of thinking about it, because some people will be like, well, we can't really, we're struggling as we are. We don't want to give discounts because we're struggling as we are. But they're like, yeah, but you're not just giving a discount to my mate. Do you know what I mean? It's like, hey, can you just help out so-and-so because he's my mate? It's such a wonderfully audacious USP that you don't even have to, there's no debate when you go, well, who's it for? And you go, emergency services responders. People are like, oh yeah, I don't really need to hear anything else. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to debate it.
And the biggest thing is companies don't have to give anything that they can't give. So we're not aggressive in our stance of you must give back X, Y, and Z in order to qualify, in order to provide a discount. It might even be that, you get an additional biscuit with your drink in the morning. It really is whatever you can do to show that, your gratitude, I suppose. And the challenge is it's not that companies don't want to. People are really unselfish, I think, business owners. They really do understand, the services and what they've given throughout this whole period, but, all the time. So getting them to provide a discount isn't really the difficulty. It's that unselfishness they have. Yeah. And it's about us trying to make sure we can connect that now with our members so that we can, join the two together so they get the footfall and we can help in a little bit and help them.
That's got to be hard when you look at tracking it, because you want to have that, not obligation, but you want to deliver value. Like, you were saying, Tom, you've got your members and then your team, and then all of the companies that are aligning themselves with you. And it's a real privilege, I don't say that in an egotistical way, for them to be aligning themselves and having Blue Light Card displayed in their business. It's great for them to have that. But then that pushes, like Steve was just saying, the responsibility or the desire from yourself is like, oh God, I hope that new person we've onboarded feels the benefit of being part of Blue Light Card. I hope they feel the difference. I want them to know that we are helping them. But you also don't want to spam people. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be respectful of your members. You're like, I'm not going to send you 100 emails a week of every single business. So how do you strike that balance, Steve?
Well, actually, it's probably best with Steve because, one thing we are doing is we're working really heavily on our technology and our product. So it's probably more Steve's response.
But also, it's a weird marry, isn't it? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer, Steve. And all I was going to say before you do is, yes, it's technologically based, but from a sales perspective, and you'll know better than anyone, Tom, I know I forget the numbers, but it's usually on the 5th or 7th contact you make a sale, isn't it? It's never, you ask somebody, or sometimes it's you ask somebody and they buy immediately, but it's that repetition and finding a different way to ask and a different way to ask the question and a different way to pitch it, perhaps in terms of technology, email, the app, anything for people, but it's a delicate balance to walk, and not spamming people.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that, and it's understanding. And tech's obviously the way that everything has to be externally marketed. We've always got to go out and say something, go out and say, but we don't. A lot of it as well is it's the app, it's the website, it's allowing people that opportunity to come in. Obviously, we've got that challenge now in a sense that we've got a lot of companies. We work with thousands of companies up and down the UK. So we've only got a little app. You've only got a little website. There's only so much you can put on a home screen. So for us, it's that challenge of making sure the information that we show people is relevant to them and, that we're getting the message across in the right way. So when Tom said about building tech, we're looking at ways that we can actually fulfill members, sort of requirements of the service. So not show them things that they're not interested in seeing.
That's it, my mind just goes crazy when I think, because I love it when you say that, you think about the concept of an app. there's that much space. There's that much space on your screen. And I imagine this is conversations you were having years ago, but I'm just literally just letting my mind run away with it now. You're thinking about how much space on the screen am I allowing for each thing, because I don't want it to look noisy, but at the same way, I can't be shown to be given preferential treatment to certain. That must be such a hard map to navigate.
It is, and I think with the app you've got the grateful thing that we have the near me feature, which allows a lot of these things to answer, because the map's the map. So you appear on a map where you are, and it's relevant to where your business is. So that allows us to flood it in a sense of certainly. The smaller businesses appear just as strong as the larger businesses. Your KFC next to a
and it allows you to give that local feel, even though you're global. Do you know what I mean? You enable yourself to say, no, it will benefit you and your local community because we do this.
Exactly. So if we search Loughborough for a typical example, we will find the smaller businesses as well as the larger businesses all together on the map. So it allows us to communicate in a way that's not chucking in hundreds of emails to your inbox showing you all these different discounts. It allows you to come in. The biggest challenge for us, and something we've worked on over the years, is getting members to come back in regularly to just try and find out why those discounts are around them, what discounts are available, what the new offers are, different campaigns we're running. Obviously we ran the Say Thank You campaign during the pandemic, which went down really, really well. It's trying to create that two-way relationship, not just relying on emails, not relying on external communications, but also having an environment within our app and websites that want people to come back and want them to come and see what the latest deals are.
But I think they want to do that as well, because and I don't think, and I'm going to call you on this, because one of the members of your team said exactly this. At times it feels like to me, until I started to learn more about your story, because you guys are based, like you've said, in Loughborough, and I'm only about 20 minutes away from you, and I've been seeing the company for God knows how many years, and assuming this was actually just some external person, nothing to do with emergency services, who had just seen an opportunity and gone for it. And that's great, and lots of companies do that, and that's wonderful. But you have a massive authenticity that I was completely unaware of, despite being aware of the business for over a decade, and I didn't know that. And you are people that have been in the local communities, you've sold on the market squares, you know what it's like for these companies to be in those shoes. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something, and I hate when people give you flipping advice on your business like they know anything about it, but I think that's something you've got to do. You've got to allow people to know who you are, because I think that's one of your most powerful tools. Obviously, it's a wonderful idea, but you guys have that authenticity.
Yeah, and as I say, we've been quite quiet in the sense of we've been so busy running, so busy trying to build things, we find it very hard to overtly come out and say things. I think the authenticity for us that's been the fundamental point, in the sense of we've not wanted to deviate from that, and we still don't, in the sense of everything we do it for a purpose and a reason for the members. And it's something obviously we've mentioned so many times already doing this podcast, how we've been going on about the members, the culture. It very much strives around that. I've got lots of friends that I've got in the police service still, friends of the fire, so and I would feel that I'm doing them and just if I brought something to the service that they wouldn't benefit from. So it very much is a case of building this out with that and mentality, continuing through the years that we have this sort of link.
And it is hard to talk about yourself, and that's what I love most about the podcast, because I see so many people, so many companies, so many ambassadors of the emergency services, and I'm in such admiration of them. But it's hard for them to tell their own stories. And I say to them, look, it's me sincerely being interested about you, because we're all so bloody humble. And I think, Tom, we said about the difference between Americans, for example, and they're not the types, but we struggle a little bit, I feel, in the UK with being proud of ourselves. Do you know what I mean? We're standing up and going, yeah, I did that. And you spoke a bit about referencing wins in the company, Tom. Acknowledging yourself and feeling proud and being able to say, no, we did a great job. It's hard for people in the UK, I think, as a culture, to celebrate themselves. And that's why I think it's so great what you do in celebrating the people on their behalf, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, part of the struggle for us, in terms of we recognise the great work we're doing, but ultimately we're supporting the great work that emergency services.
It's a no-brainer.
So really, you sit there thinking, oh, that was great, but actually the people that we're supporting are doing, things that from knowing, the beauty is I grew up obviously with Stephen when he was in the police, and some of the things he had to go through as an individual. I went to his sort of swearing in and then went through the turmoil of being a best friend while someone's in the police. It's some of the things you have to do, and you just do. As soon as you get that call, you go there, you do it. Yeah. I couldn't do it, and that's something that, again, keeps us humble, because what we're doing is supporting an audience that deserve it.
And it's also recognising their skill sets as well, because you said something earlier, Tom, about your move into the care sector. Because I'm the same. I look at different roles, even within the emergency services, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we run into burning buildings or whatever. But I personally would really struggle working in the care sector, because I think that is bloody hard. You know, seeing people's, because Steve, you'll remember the story. You'll go to an incident. It's trauma. We go to trauma. Someone's hurt themselves. They've been attacked, or they've been in an accident, and it's quick and it's violent, and then it finishes to a certain extent, and we leave. Whereas in the care sector, it's not all about suffering. You know, there's a lot of love and caring goes on in this sector, but you do see a lot of struggle. You see people who are struggling, and it's the responsibilities of the care workers to help that. And I think that's a really difficult sector to work in as well.
Yeah, I think they all are. I think, as you say, it's a different battle for each one. But as I say, I think that's where we ensure that we remain humble to a degree, because of the audience we're supporting and what they're doing day in, day out. That's the thing. It's not just a one-off. It's day in, day out. That's one of the beauties of doing what we do. You know, you feel a real sense of worth and pride for what you're doing.
What are the massive goals now, I suppose, as you said, Steve, about trying to move out the other end of this pandemic and supporting the businesses and emergency responders as we try and find that new normal that people keep referring to, and whatever that's going to look like. What are some of the key metrics that you're trying to support your businesses and your members with now, and I suppose for the next 6 months?
The big thing for us is to continue doing exactly what we're doing, in the sense of building these discounts, building on the framework of providing great everyday discounts for our members, in the sense of we want to be able to keep inspiring them, keep them saving where we need to save them. So, that's on everyday items. As Tom mentioned, the Morrison's deal was, fantastic. We've been able to support the emergency services, the NHS, the armed forces, all the sub-services throughout the Christmas period with 10% off a grocery shop. We thought that'd be something it was almost like, the thing that we thought was impossible to do. With somehow, the team have pulled it off, which is brilliant, which is fantastic. Great for Morrison's, great for Blue Light Card, but most importantly, great for the members. So it's continuing to build on relationships like this to try and see what else we can do to try and really provide those everyday savings, not just luxury, but everyday savings that they're going to need.
That it's a really exciting time, and I can't wait to see what you guys do, and girls, I know you have in the team over the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, fellas, and look after each other, send love to the family, and I really look forward to speaking with you soon.
Yeah, it's been really good, Pete. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Awesome. Take it easy, guys.
Yeah, bye.
Well, there we are, boys and girls, ladies and germs. That was Tom and Steve from Blue Light Card. What a fantastic chat. Really, really enjoyed speaking to them. I never even knew they only lived about 15 or 20 minutes away from myself, based in the UK, which is really, really awesome. Obviously, we are in the pandemic still, so as will probably obvious, you heard it over Zoom. The gift of technology allowed us to have a moment in time and share a great conversation, talking about the wonderful business that they have grown over this, I think it's 12-year period now. Such a great story. And I mean, to close it off, they are showing no signs of slowing down. They are speeding up, growing to exponential amounts. It's such a fantastic, Cinderella story from, Steve, frontline police officer, Tom with that entrepreneurial itch and sales skills, getting together as best friends from childhood, being on the market squares, doing paper rounds, and they've grown something really incredible, really authentic. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with somebody if you enjoyed it. Share it on socials, share it on your stories, grab one of the snippets from the conversation, bounce it out there. Go over and take a look at Blue Light Card. It's an awesome company. There really are some great day-to-day things. Like Steve was saying, it's not just about luxury items or, going on a ski trip or buying the new car or anything like that. There are those discounts on there, but these are day-to-day items as well, from the massive, commitment and engagement they've got with Morrison's to being able to do so much more for our frontline responders, for everybody out there, looking after our communities, looking after each other. And on that note, look after yourself. Thank you for listening in. I do not take your time for granted. We spend so long making sure we have great conversations, doing the research, doing the prep, finding awesome people, and I hope you found that in our two guests today. Big thanks to them, big thanks to the team, and a big thanks to you. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon. I mean real soon, right here on the Firefighters Podcast.